Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello. Welcome back to another episode of... Oh, yeah, it's rebranded. Brian Schumpert hasn't been here since we rebranded it because I was like, I already have the Atlanta Sports Guys, and I'm tired of trying to find the time to figure out if we're recording this on a Friday because that's the Go Big Orange recap show and the Go Big Orange Friday show, and then the during the regular season, it kind of makes things a little bit more complicated. So I was like, we all are. We're all Tennessee volunteer sports guys. That's what we are. Like, everybody on this program, that's what we are. So that's what we're going with. And it's that way I don't tie myself to a day. That I'm not, this encompasses whatever day. We are recording this each and every Sunday night during the Tennessee Volunteers football season. But folks, that man laughing over there, the most prepared man in Tennessee Volunteer sports media, Rocky Top Insiders, Ryan Schumpert. Ryan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back on after it's been a couple week hiatus for me.
Yeah, I mean it's been a little bit for you, and then also it's just been I've had the full Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm afternoon, Ryan Schumpert, where I'm I don't know what to do with Josh Dobbs shredding my team and ruining my season at home. It was very uncomfortable to both wish him well and to root him on, and then also like no, yes, no, yeah, like it was just brutal, an all around horrific NFL afternoon for myself, Ryan Schumpert.
Well, yeah, for sure, but that at least is better than Will Levis shredding your team, and also
I don't know about that. Will Levis second round pick, he had a cannon. Like Will Levis was out here dialing it up. You're on the road. Hey, I'll let that slide. Like still first round arm talent. And I love Josh Dobbs, don't get me wrong, but like it's a little bit different when the dude gets here 3 days ago, doesn't know his teammates at all, doesn't really know the offense, and still shreds you like he's been there for many years. And it's in your building. Like it was, I would say, worse in a multitude of ways than what happened in Tennessee last week.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in some, and I won't try to get inside the mind of a Falcons fan, but
you should never. It's a very, very dark place.
It's a special type of bad defense to be giving up this many over-the-top passes to the Tennessee Titans. I know Will Levis throws the ball better down the field than Ryan Tannehill does. That's not an offense that has receivers to take top off the defense, and that's all that happened continuously. And they played, again, I didn't watch the game. I was up at Michigan State for basketball, but besides the point, I guess. But that's the best the Titans offenses looked in like 3.5 years. And even with that, they barely won. And probably wouldn't have won if Heineke had just played in the first half.
You only get one secondary to count on to make a stop. Is it the Tennessee Volunteers secondary or the Atlanta Falcons secondary?
Oh, man. That's tough. I guess I'll go with the Vols because they did it a couple times at Kentucky.
That's true. Wow. Look how far we've come. The Tennessee Volunteers, we trust them more than an NFL secondary, or how far the Atlanta Falcons have fallen. But this is not an Atlanta Falcon show. That's coming later in the week, so you'll get that. Don't forget, folks, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like button, each and every week. New episodes on the YouTube channel each and every day, so appreciate you guys checking us out there if that is how you're watching. You can also get clips, all the good stuff, chasethomaspodcast.com. Make sure you bookmark the homepage and check that out if you have not already done so. You can email us with any Tennessee Vol questions or anything like that for us. Tweet at us, anything like that, at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com or at @podchasethomas, all across the internet, all TikTok, everything else, with new stuff going up each and every day. And as always, if you enjoy this Tennessee Volunteer podcast here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, you leave this show a 5-star rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if that is indeed how you are listening to today's show. Tennessee Sports Guys each and every Sunday night, coming up on your feed on Mondays during the Tennessee Volunteers football season. Ryan Schumpert, 24 hours after, biggest takeaway you're still thinking about from the Vols UConn on Saturday afternoon, sir?
My biggest takeaway that I'm still thinking about is I had to sit inside the Neyland Stadium press box watching a 50-point game while every other noon game was amazing. That's what I'm leaving thinking about, is how I missed all that good football. I think from the actual Tennessee UConn side of things, it was, I guess it's just positive that you've seen continued growth from this team and the fact that they played against a far lesser opponent the way they did last season and the way they did in 2021. Whereas earlier this year against Austin Peay, Tennessee played horrifically. I mean, just an awful, awful game, really all around against UTSA. They've had a great first quarter, but they couldn't sustain it for a full 4 quarters. Finally, against UConn, Tennessee did exactly what Josh Heupel coach teams typically do to defenses that are far, far overmatched by the Vols offense, and they completely overwhelmed them. They hit big plays. They ran the ball consistently, and they were able to get the backups in by the first drive of the second half. So I think there's not a ton to glean, but for an offense that is seemingly, if not turning a corner, at least improving as the year goes on, you didn't see a step back in a spot where you potentially could have.
Did you get full explanation on what was going on with Heupel and Mora? And then can you elaborate for the good folks who maybe did not see what happened pregame with the two sides? And then also how Heupel addressed it, because he kind of laughed about it. Like, clearly something was said between Heupel and Heupel and Mora in that postgame handshake with Heupel's smirk.
Yeah, so thoughtful was to use the word I was using to describe the stuff before the game. I don't think you can really call it a brouhaha because there wasn't any physical interaction. Brouhaha is usually my favorite word to use.
Mm-hmm.
So Tennessee comes into Neyland Stadium after the Vol walk, and I think a number of players, and then Josh Heupel is walking on the field. Josh Heupel always throws the football with his son for, 10, 15, 20 minutes or whatever, right when they get on the field from the Vol walk. A bunch of UConn players were warming up on Tennessee's side of the field, and words exchanged from both sides, including Heupel, and I believe Mora too, is my understanding of the situation, is that some words were exchanged right there. And, Heupel was telling him to go back to their side. I don't think Mora took too kindly to that. You mentioned it, obviously kind of drive-by handshake between Mora and Heupel. It looked like, you couldn't really tell from the TV angle, but it kind of seemed like Mora, very much fast handshake, drive-by. Mora kind of said something to him, and you kind of see Heupel turn around and, like you said, smirk was probably the way to describe it. I don't think he really said anything back, but he was kind of laughing or get a load of this guy was the vibe was the vibe I got from Heupel. I was like, get a load of this guy. And then so you go into the post game press conference. One of the TV reporters starts the question by being like, "You're probably not going to like this question." And Josh Heupel was like, "Great way to start a question." And he was like, "You don't have to ask it." And he was like, "No, I'm going to ask it anyway." And he, said, it looked like he kind of gave, this is the part I thought was funny. He said, it looked like he kind of gave you a drive-by handshake. And Heupel just goes, "Yeah." And then question continues on. It's like, it kind of looked like you maybe turned and had a reaction to it or what exactly happened there. And Heupel's like, "I don't really know what my reaction was." And then just kind of classic coach speak. Obviously, Josh Heupel's not one to make a whole lot of headlines in his press conferences. So he just went on to be complimentary of Jim Mora and UConn's team as a whole, saying they've lost a bunch of close games this year and are better than the record indicates. So that's kind of the full story. And I imagine whatever happened post-game would have to go back to what happened pre-game because, Tennessee played their fourth-string quarterback. They they had the ball inside the 5-yard line at the end of the game, and they ran out the clock. There was nothing Tennessee did from like a run-up the score standpoint that would have led to anything like that. Like, maybe you could have said after the Akron or Missouri or UT Martin games last year.
Well, you mentioned too that they're turning the corner, and that was something that I think if you're a Tennessee fan, you have to be most excited about for this stretch run. Is that was the best Tennessee's offense has looked all year. In the latest SP Plus rankings, Tennessee is now a top 20 offense and defense. They're 14th in offense, 20th in defense. So very balanced, far more balanced. The defense has been a lot better by and large. Really, the only issues that we talk about in the group chat is, the secondary still just playing off, and UConn, every Vol fan was like trying to figure out if Jolly could, Lolly or Jolly, I think it was Jolly, if he could transfer into to Tennessee next year. Because every Tennessee fan knows that like the tight end position is quite barren going into next year. Although Ethan Davis popped in this one in the second half, so good to see him get a couple catches, and he's going to be a good player, I think, for Tennessee down the line. But, how much can you read into the offense really hitting their stride. We saw like the Jaylen Hyatt touchdown against Alabama in this one to Ramel Keaton, where it's just there's nobody there, and it's something that has been sorely missed. Where you're like, man, I didn't know how much I missed that until you actually see it happen. Again, it's a little bit different. Many are saying that UConn and Alabama might have a different feel to it when you hit those kind of shot plays, but I think that made you feel the best if you're a Tennessee fan, is you saw the combination of the Jaylen Wright big runs and the domination in the run game that we've been accustomed to all year, but you also saw the over-the-top, wide-open, schemed guys, wide-open stuff that you've not seen all year, that you're like, man, with Mizzou and Georgia over the next 2 weeks, that is exactly how you needed to see this offense look going into those just critical games. Is you want them. You could not ask for a better situation there, I don't think.
No, you're right, because that has been sorely missing. And even, to score a wide touchdown, you see what happens when a ball is thrown on the money across the middle. Milton, I feel like, has been better in recent weeks, but even this year when he's completed passes over the middle, it's like it's a little behind the receiver, and he's got to work to catch it, and it severely limits the yak. And obviously this is UConn, and it was pretty wide open, but he had some right in stride, and that gives the fastest guy on the field the ability to turn the corner and score a touchdown on it. So it's all a good sign. The wide open stuff over the top, less into, just because it is UConn. And I think a lot of that stuff, and it'll be interesting to see this going forward in the long term. I guess I wonder how much getting those stuff over the top is going to be gone now, no matter who the quarterback is, just because teams are more used to SEC. Teams are more used to Tennessee's tempo, and they're more used to what Heupel tries to do, and they have a little bit of a playbook on it now. So that's a part I'll be interested going forward, past this year, and I don't take a ton from that. And I guess the offensive performance as a whole, I wouldn't be drawing massive conclusions on its own, but when you consider it's coming off to perhaps Tennessee's best offensive games of the season before it, it's just more room for optimism for that unit moving into the last 3 games of the season. And to your point, really these next 2 games against Missouri and Georgia.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. What do you think was the biggest moment of the game for you? What stood out the most to you in this one?
Probably Jaylen Wright on the second play. I mean, it just made it clear that this was not going to be a competitive game. I would go with that to score a White touchdown, just because it was something this offense has been missing. We haven't seen a ton of, and it was also like, this was so opposite, and Jim Mora shouldn't have done it, but this was so opposite of how teams played Tennessee last year, when you saw these offenses just panic, go for it on 4th down all the time against Tennessee. And obviously, I think it was 21-3 at the time. Tennessee wasn't going to lose this game. But Jim Mora which is why Jim Mora should have gone for it, but Jim Mora on 4th and 3 at the 42-yard line on Tennessee side of the field decides to punt the ball, and Tennessee just immediately makes them pay on the 3rd play with an 82-yard touchdown. So I think that was a look at what, again, another thing that Tennessee's offense has just been missing this season, that reminded me of last season, where you saw, oh yeah, that's why teams always went forward on 4th down against Tennessee, because they didn't feel like they were going to get a stop, and Tennessee could score at a snap of the finger. And teams have not had to coach that way against Tennessee this year for good reason. And in this situation, Jim Mora should have gone for it, no matter what had happened, because you're down 21-3. What are you coaching for, to lose by 40 instead of 50? But I'd say those 2 instances were telling. And the first one, the Jaylen Wright run, that this was not going to be a competitive game by any means. And then the second one, that it was just a kind of flashback to what we've seen from Heupel's offense the first 2 years.
I agree. I also think for me, it was maybe Tyler Barron's strip sack touchdown. Like, that was one of those where Barron has almost gotten those several times. And 2 years ago, the flashback of Barron having a callback against Ole Miss for an outrageous reason. It was just good to see Barron have a touchdown. Like, that actually was my favorite thing, because this defense is a bend don't break defense. They don't get a lot of pick sixes. Obviously, Kamal Haddon had a big one against South Carolina that was extremely memorable. But this is not a defense that is actively trying to force turnovers. This is a defense that is just trying to stop the run and keep everything in front of them. And by and large, that's been pretty effective. Like I talked at the top of the show, it's still a top 20 defense in the country. It's getting better year over year under Tim Banks, but there is still a weak spot. And part of it, I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg thing when it comes to, is it personnel at the back end for secondary, or is it the coaching in the secondary as to why Tennessee's secondary is still this bad after 3 years? And I don't know. I go back and forth on it, but I think if you're a Tennessee fan, maybe the young guy that popped the most for you, outside of Big Bryce Young, Nico Iamaleava, is Rickey Gibson, who he's bigger than I thought he would be. Not really afraid of contact, not afraid of the moment. And I think just one of those welcome sights where you're like, oh, this is what it's like to have some 4-star blue chippers at corner. This is what that might feel like in a year or two, because I think Rickey Gibson is going to be a really good player. And I think that was something that you needed to see, is that some young guys to pop at that spot.
Definitely. I had that as one of my things I was really looking for in this game, was one for Tennessee's pass defense to be better than it was against Kentucky, and it really wasn't, at least for a half. It was very discouraging. In the second half, I mean, you see how much it took together. In the first half, Tennessee was not getting a lot of pressure, and in the second half, Tennessee got a lot of pressure, and the pass defense was significantly better. But Gibson was a guy, I wanted to see the young guys as a whole, but Gibson was the one that feels like he's the farthest ahead of the 3 freshman corners, and I thought he played really well. He had the one, I think they call it a pass interference. Pass interference is really more of holding on 4th down to move the sticks for UConn, but he made some nice plays. He turned his head on deep ball. He got up in the screen game and made some tackles right around the line of scrimmage. And he did enough to where if Tennessee secondary struggles the way I think it'll struggle next week against Missouri, he should be in the rotation and getting playing time. That doesn't mean he has to start, doesn't mean he has to get the most snaps or anything at corner, but he's a guy that should get a shot next week if Tennessee's starting corners or top 3 or 4 corners aren't just, playing really well.
And I think that's what you have to, and I also love keeping the bid alive. Wesley Walker and Jaylen McCullough getting the most snaps of anyone in this game, which is just a great bit to carry on the rest of this year. I love it. And also, Jordan Thomas pop. Like, Jordan Thomas, I think, stood out a little bit. Like, I think he's going to be a starter on next year's team, or he should be. And that's good to see. Andre Turrentine, I think, was fine in his spot. It's like, that is something positive. But I think Jordan Matthews, it certainly seems like they're redshirting him, because he should have gotten in this game if the plan was not to do that, right? I think the Jordan Matthews thing is the most, I shouldn't say concerning, the biggest eyebrow raiser.
Agree. Agree. I'd have to go look at how much he's played in special teams, but it's like, he really not have played. He hasn't played a defense. You're not going to play a defense in 4 games this season, so why would you not be able to play him and utilize that thing? So no, I thought that was very puzzling, and I'm not really sure what the answer is to it.
Yeah, it's something to keep an eye on for sure. But Ryan Schumpert, maybe the biggest question here, and we know what everyone, this was my excitement, and this is where I got redneck mad in the second half. We got 2 series from Nico Iamaleava in this game before Gaston Moore came in, and this is nothing against Gaston Moore, who should probably be the backup again next year for Tennessee. I think he's got another year eligibility, right, Ryan?
I think so, yeah.
So he'll probably be around next year. Jake Merklinger coming into the fold, because you don't want a situation where you have true sophomore Nico Iamaleava and true freshman Jake Merklinger being the main 2 quarterback options on the depth chart going next year. As talented as those 2 may be, you just don't. That's not really a spot you want to be in the SEC year in, year out. But that being said, in those 2 series, Ryan Schumpert, that we saw from Nico was just as advertised, in the sense that what we saw, that on the run throw to Ethan Davis, where he had that bucket bomb to him down the field, that was just the throw of the day, right? That he is so good off platform, where he is so good at maneuvering around the pocket, and something that immediately reminds you of the difference between just upside versus him and Joe is not size. It's just, and this is not a shot at Joe, I think it's just, it's almost instinctual, where I don't think he has this, where Nico is so good at feeling pressure and maneuvering and just keeping calm about it, where it's pretty amazing to see how he is able to dance around the pocket and make it all look very easy. I'm very pleased to see something like that, and I get that it's UConn, but he's just so natural maneuvering around the pocket and throwing on the run. And I made the joke about Big Bryce Young. I really do think that was something I jotted down. I'm just that's all we've seen from Bryce Young the last 2 years at Alabama. The difference is he can sit in the pocket where Bryce can't because he's 6'6", 6'7", where he doesn't have to go outside the pocket to make throws to see down the field. He can sit in the pocket or he can dice you up on the run. I just think the Swiss Army knife approach of how Nico is going to have an opportunity to feast on teams over the next 2 years, Tennessee's quarterback, really stood out to me because I just think he is going to be such a pain to deal with because even if you think you've got him, you don't, because I think he is so natural and so good running and so good at just not avoiding hits. Like there's nothing negative I can really say about what we saw from Nico. I think it was everything you wanted to see as a player. And then the cool touchdown to McAllen Castles with the fake and then go forward, and that concept was just cool because we haven't seen that from a quarterback this year.
Agreed that, pocket presence and kind of having the feel for it is largely something you have or you don't have. I think you can teach it a little bit and you can get a little bit better at it. I mean, Joe Milton's kind of an example of that this year. I think we've seen him get a little bit better at it as the years progresses, but it's largely something you just have or you don't. And as good as Hendon Hooker was, like, that was something that he had a great feel for pocket presence, a great feel for where the pass rush was, but he was not going to get out of the pocket and make throws down the field. He was going to get out of a 5-yard loss and turn it into, sometimes when he had nowhere, he would turn it into, get back to the line of scrimmage. And then sometimes, like the play against Florida last year, he turns it into a 50-yard run. So he had a great ability to limit negative plays and make something out of it. But I think the big plays was largely capped because he was largely going to have to do it with his legs, whereas Nico seems to be very comfortable getting out of the pocket and throwing the ball down the field and throwing the ball off platform. So I'd agree. We said that way back early in the season when we seen him a few times, that we felt confident. The one thing we did think he was better at than Joe Milton was he has better pocket presence and a better feel for that stuff. And you saw that again. You saw that to a greater degree in the Tennessee was 3 of 4 on third downs when he was in the game. The one they didn't convert was a 3rd and 7 run that I think they were probably going to go for it if they got a little bit closer, but it only got a yard, so they punted it. The other two, he scrambles up the middle for 25 yards, jumps out of safety, and then the other two, he rolls right and throws to McCullen Castles on the sideline, and then he rolls right and throws to Caleb Webb on the sideline for first down. So those were all really impressive plays. And then another, I like the tall Bryce Young comparison. The other one that I'll give a little bit is Jaylen Daniels. Just watching that LSU game last night, just the skill set's a little bit different there, but the tall, really skinny, fast quarterbacks who have big arms and are pretty accurate, but also you're kind of surprised by just how fast they are when they break through the line of scrimmage up the middle, scrambling was something that kind of stood out to me watching LSU Alabama last night.
Yeah, and I don't think he's going to take the same kind of hits that Jayden Daniels takes. Jayden Daniels invites some crazy contact all year, and what we've seen the last couple of years, and I just don't think that's going to be Nico. I think Nico is running to evade and just get to the sticks and get to where he needs to go and then just carry on. I don't think he has any interest of getting blown up and being that kind of runner. He's not going to be lowering his shoulder like Joe Milton and Jayden Daniels. I think he's going to be running with a purpose and running with a reason to get out. And he's huge. So I think getting to the sticks will be a little bit easier for him because he's just a big dude. And he's also he is a natural runner where Joe Milton is still just not natural in that zone. He's just more of a pocket passer. And I think what you'll see from Nico is kind of a blend between him and Hendon and Joe, where it's Hendon, I think, was first mobile, and then we evolved in the Heupel offense to kind of become that pocket guy. I think you're seeing a middle ground here with Nico, and just the best case possible. And why he's a 5-star is like he can beat you in a multitude of ways, and with his size, his feet, his pocket awareness, everything. It's just, I can't wait for Nico. We have an opportunity, Ryan Schumpert, here at Everything School HQ. Tennessee basketball finishing first in the SEC, making a deep potential March run. We'll see. Deepest team they've ever had under Barnes. Tennessee baseball, which Tony Vitello just doesn't take a weekend off. He's just always recruiting. He's just like, I'm just going to continue being the Nick Saban of SEC baseball year over year. Like, I don't care. I'm going to have a top class in 2024, and then I'm just going to stack it on a top class in 2025, and I'm just going to keep stacking. Like, I'm just going to build the Death Star juggernaut as things get built up on the left field side and the right field side, and all that's great. So we've got 5 great months looking ahead. 6 months, really, Ryan Schumpert. You know this. Like, it's everything school HQ. Like a lot of winning is coming up for Tennessee football or Tennessee basketball and baseball. This all leads into a potential College World Series run, and then we get Nico hype videos of him leading the first team offense going into next summer. Ryan Schumpert, I was just thinking about that today of like how amazing the next year could be here in Knoxville, Tennessee, because we're looking at an all-time great run where Tennessee's going to go into next year with college football playoff expectations with a guy who can win the Heisman right out of the gate here as a sophomore in Nico Iamaleava. We get that over a 1-year run. You kidding me? You kidding me? What a run.
She said, we're no more winning. We're tired of the winning. We can't do it anymore. Oh, man. Chase, one of the reasons I love you is the hyperbole you oftentimes speak in. And you hitting Tony Vitello as baseball Nick Saban before he's won a national championship straight into Nico as Heisman potential as a sophomore is special stuff. But no, I mean, I agree with your general point. I mean, Tennessee basketball should have a really good season. Tennessee baseball is going to be really good. I think it would, the expectation will be to make it to Omaha again. And in Tennessee football is certainly going to have a lot of questions to answer and a lot of guys to replace. But in this first year of new college football, you look around the country I guess I shouldn't say around the country. You look in the Big Ten and you look in the SEC at the good teams and you look at their schedules. Boy, does Tennessee have an easy one compared to most of them. I mean, it is a really, really favorable schedule. And here sitting way, way, way out from the season opener, Tennessee will be definitive favorites in 9 games. And then it's kind of like, can you beat Oklahoma or Georgia on the road / Alabama at home? Can you win one of those games? Because if you do that and then you don't slip up, you're going to be a college football playoff team. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. See, you're backing it up. I'm just telling you, folks.
No, I agree with your sentiment. There was just a couple of the things you said where, especially the Tony Vitello is Nick Saban of SEC baseball. Was a special comment.
I'm not kidding. Or if I had to do an emotional investment ranking for Vol fans, like to just like make sure you get the most bang for your buck in terms of emotional investment, your emotional investment should be number 1 with Tennessee baseball, and it shouldn't really be close. Like that should be number 1. You get the most amount of games. You're building and building the stadium. You're basically getting in at the ground floor of what is turning into an increasingly bigger juggernaut year over year. This year, they're going to be the favorites along with LSU to win the SEC. It's really hard to go back-to-back winning the College World Series and running it back with this group. So we'll see. LSU will be really good, but Tennessee's going to go into it over the next couple of years, these classes and everything else. Like, you want to get on the ground floor. Like, Tennessee can win a College World Series in the next year or two. And they've gotten there 2 of the last 3. The year they didn't, they were the best team in college baseball, one of the best college baseball teams of all time. So that's just a really good spot to be in, and I just don't think it's going anywhere. In basketball, Barnes got an extension. He should be number 2, where it's just you look at the classes, Bishop Oswald coming into the fold, and we'll see who the next 5-star Barnes brings in over the next couple of years, because now you have that certainty that he's going to coach these kids. So I think that will help in terms of getting more guys to sign on to Tennessee, is just knowing that he's going to be the coach for a little bit longer there. And I mean, you look at the football front, we'll see, but that's a really good spot. If you're like, hey, this is good. We're in uncharted waters over the last 15 years. Like, just take it easy in terms of the football part of it, because it's been so bad for nearly 2 decades that just, hey, it's fun. You have the 5-star best quarterback in the class coming in next year. It's going to be fun. You want to make the playoff. I still think it's going to be extremely difficult to get through the Georgias and the Bamas and the Michigans and Ohio States of the world to win a national title. I think it's just the nature of the beast. There's just a lot of roadblocks that you got to look at. But I think in terms of those 3, I just think baseball should be, in terms of emotional investment, where it ruins your weekend in May and June. It should be baseball for you. Is that fair?
I think the sentiment is, I don't know about the emotional attachment of it, because you shouldn't be getting upset at some weekend in April.
Well, hold on.
One
my
weekend
group
on
chats.
its own.
Hold on. You know how the group chat goes,
You're
Ryan.
getting mad at weekends in February, and it's nonsense. I mean, you were ready to cancel the season after Tennessee lost to Grand Canyon. Tony Vitello, the man you've dubbed as the next Nick Saban, needed to walk back home from Arizona with some of the coaching decisions he was making. But from the sentiment that Tennessee, if you gave me who's winning a national championship next? Tennessee football, baseball, or basketball? Or who has the most likely chance to win a national championship with the three coaches that are there right now? I'm no doubt taking Tennessee baseball and Tony Vitello. Like, that's no question to me. So I agree with that sentiment of it. The baseball season, college baseball season is such a roller coaster. And in the same way that, March Madness is like this too, where at the end of the day, what matters is how you're playing when the NCAA tournament rolls around. So the emotional side of it, football is always more, to me, makes more sense to be emotional and committed to it because every game is so important in college football. And that'll go away a little bit with the 12-team playoff, but largely that'll stay the same, or at least more than it will in the basketball and baseball.
Yeah. Final thing here, Vols open up 2-point favorites at Mizzou. It started at +1 for the Vols at Mizzou, but it's already shifted to the Vols being favored. Sorry, what'd you say?
I said, wow. I saw when it opened out. I haven't seen that it had shifted to Tennessee being favored.
Yeah, it shifted on Circa Sports to Tennessee -2. But I think it's going to keep moving around the rest of this week. But I mean, I think that's also just one of those where Tennessee, I think, lucked out in the biggest way. And I think I talked to Grant about this a couple days ago. I wanted to get your perspective on it. I think Tennessee lucked out getting Mizzou when they did, kind of like when they got A&M at home after A&M has this big emotional physical game against Alabama. They're banged up, and then they have to get up off the mat against a completely different kind of team in Tennessee right out of the gate. And I think that's going to be something that helps Tennessee, is that Mizzou just gives it their all, comes up just short down the stretch against Georgia, get banged around. Brady Cook gets smacked by Tyke Smith and a couple other guys, and he has a rough ending to the game. Like, I just think that's the best spot for Tennessee, is that they get to come in after basically having a bye with how this game went and not having to play John Campbell, not having really to play Amari Thomas. Like, I think that is a big, big reason as to why I feel a lot better about Mizzou going into this week versus how I thought it was going to be maybe before this week.
Tennessee's definitely caught like a lot of good schedule breaks, and we were talking about it in our chat this week, where if Georgia beats Ole Miss this week, and once again, like, you have that Georgia game's in a perfect spot for Tennessee. Georgia's schedule, which everybody kind of mocked all offseason, and it isn't great, but Ole Miss emerges as a good team. Missouri emerges as a good team, and obviously Georgia's taking a little bit of a step back, so those games are more competitive. And it's what we've said since the summer, that Tennessee's chances of beating Georgia is better if the game's not for the East.
Yeah.
And if Georgia beats Ole Miss this week, it won't be. And Georgia will be coming off two, maybe not emotional, but a lot more taxing big games. And heck, the game before that's a rivalry game against Florida. So you get them in a good spot. And I do agree with Missouri. The one thing where I would say it's different, I don't think this is quite a spot where after Georgia and them having a good team is really important. The emotional state of, oh man, Missouri, we didn't win the SEC East, man. We lost it. I don't think that is as important, because the expectations for Missouri and that football program as a whole, like, Missouri should be, maybe I'm wrong, I'm almost not in that locker room, but they should be extremely fired up for this game. A chance for Missouri to go 10-2, like, that's a banner program year, like a defining year for the program. And there's still a ton to play for. And obviously 9-3 would be good too, but winning 10 regular season games for Missouri would be a huge, huge deal. So to me, it's not quite like, let's say it was Florida that had lost to Georgia and it was having that type of season, and then Tennessee gets them afterwards, like a huge letdown spot. And that was the goal, to win the SEC. So I think that's a little bit different. But yeah, there's no doubt that Tennessee gets really both of these next two games at very favorable spots in the schedule.
Well, there you go. Ryan Schumpert, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at RockyTopInsider.com this week?
We'll have tons of stuff looking at Tennessee, Missouri, kind of putting the finishing, really probably the day we put the finishing touches on Tennessee, UConn. We probably won't have too much else spill over into the week. So tons of stuff to get you ready for Tennessee, Missouri. And then for myself, big feature story coming out tomorrow on Tony Iamaleava, the Tennessee sophomore power forward / center, right for the day of Tennessee season opener. So we'll have that. We'll have complete coverage of Tennessee season opener against Tennessee Tech. And then I'll be up in Madison, Wisconsin on Friday night as the Vols go up there to take on the Badgers in their first true test of the regular season. So I'll be there on Friday, and Jack and Rick will both be in Columbia, Missouri on Saturday. And we'll have everything you need this week for Tennessee basketball and Tennessee football as we fully crossover season.
Goodness gracious. You're all over the place. But you're not going to Columbia too, right? You're not doing a double dip that weekend. Okay.
Not doing a double dip. I was actually hoping for, even though it'd be worse for Tennessee, I was hoping for a night game in Columbia because I booked all my travel for Wisconsin before the game time was announced. So I made sure I was getting back before noon, just in case it was noon, I'd be available to watch and work. But night game in Madison, early flight out of Chicago, I'm not going to be getting much sleep Friday night. I was hoping for a night game so I can get a nice little nap in before. But don't think that's going to work out for me.
Well, hey, that's what you signed up for, Ryan Schumpert. You'll get through it.
Those are the breaks.
Those are the breaks. You got Dr. Pepper for a reason. Ryan Schumpert, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you next week.